as you often can. Derek is the owner of my maid service in Cincinnati, Dayton, and Dallas, Texas as well. Cincinnati and Dayton, Ohio, and Dallas, Texas. I'll clarify that. He also has a commercial business, ACS Commercial Cleaning, and he is a partner and coach, of course, with Cleaning Business Builders, and he is also the co-publisher of CleaningBusinessToday.com, the industry's leading trade resource online. So that is a quick introduction to Derek. We're going to talk about operations, and I don't want to take any more minutes away from this because it's really good and I can't wait. Derek, take it away.
Hey, you took a lot of the information from one of my slides, Cece, but that's okay.
Oh, boo, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, before we get started, just want to let everyone know that our webinar today is sponsored by Jobber. If you're not familiar with Jobber, they have cloud-based software for managing your field service people and your schedule. If you're not familiar with it, go take a look at it. It's getjobber.com. It's got the ability to schedule your people in the field, to close jobs, accept payment, and they've also got some upgrades. Like the one I like most is what's called geotagging, where when people clock in and out, it can actually physically locate where they are on a GPS device. So like I said, everything today is sponsored by Jobber, so please thank them for what they are helping pay for this today by going out and checking out their website. The agenda, we're going to quickly talk about what's in operations, and then we're going to talk about creating a user experience for your two groups, how to do operation systems for your clients, then how to think about operational systems for your employees, and we have a reason for doing that, and then how important it is to write it down as you go in measuring output. And to be clear, kind of what we had in mind today when we were talking about operations isn't that we're going to teach you everything you need to know about operations. That would be about a 20-hour class with some homework assignments. What we wanted to do today is give you a framework of how to go about creating operational systems for your company, how to think about it and take it up step by step, piece by piece, because this isn't something that any company I know of just launched on day one. They wrote a section, created another section, created another section. So we've got some recommendations on how you go about doing that. Like I said, Cece stole most of my thunder, but for those of you that haven't met me, hi, that's me. Really need another picture. I hate that picture. I look all squinty-eyed. But my maid service, we operate in 3 cities, soon to open in 2 more cities. We're expanding like a virus across the country, and things have been going pretty well. I do get a lot of press, Better Homes and Gardens, CNN Money, CBS Business Journals, things like that. So operations, basically, you know, you've got your geeky definition on here, but the specific action that each member of your organization performs. I like to think of operations as a system or a procedure and process, your synonyms on the side. And to me, a business should operate like a machine. I think of, while we have a service business, at the end of the day, our raw materials we dump in the top are employees and client leads, and out the bottom should come profit. And everything in between is all part of this giant system that generates profit at the bottom. So you've got raw material of people up top broken into 2 groups, clients and customers. I'm waving in the air like you guys can see me. That gets dropped into this big machine, which is your operations, and out of the bottom should drop some amount of profit left over for you. So when I talk about operations, I'm talking about all those systems and processes that get things done in a systematic way so that you don't have to watch it all the time and your business begins to function a little bit more like a machine. And here at Cleaning Business Builders, we've attempted to try to describe what that machine looks like. And we think of it as having sort of these 3 legs. You have to recruit, evaluate, and hire, and train your techs. And then you've got to have a system for marketing and advertising, how to convert those leads into customers, how to maintain those customers, schedule them, dispatch them, and actually get them clean when they're supposed to be. And then you've got these support systems around equipment and supplies and maintenance and all these other things that have to be done. Because if you show up and your equipment doesn't work, bad things happen. So this is sort of a very simplistic view. We get into a lot more detail, but in some of the programs we teach, like Foundations of Success, this is how we kind of break it out and think about the machine. So once again, your raw materials get dumped in here, where we've got our recruits coming in here, we got our leads coming in here, and out the bottom over here, somewhere on the right, should be coming out $signs. And that's basically what our machine is going to look like. Now, in the beginning, most people are really worried about more about operations as it relates to clients. You're probably cleaning yourself or you're able to still keep an eye on things. So we recommend that the first step you do is you concentrate on the client experience. That means things like, what's your client service agreement like? What are your scheduling procedures? What are your payment methods, your quality methods? How do you get your customers, your marketing campaigns, and your sales pipeline? And so that's the first thing is, you don't have a lot of employees yet, so let's concentrate on the process of managing your customer experience. And one of the really important things, and we're going to talk about this several times over and over again, is that you write this stuff down. Because for a lot of us, it begins as very, very naturally. But remember, at some point in the future, you're going to want to start giving this stuff away. You are not always going to want to do it yourself. So you might have in your mind what you think the perfect system is, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if no one else can replicate it. So be sure to write those down as you go. So if you're just starting from scratch or you literally just open your business, start by thinking about your client processes. What's your service agreement? Do you have a policy for skips and cancels and reschedules? How much notification do you require? What are you going to do when you break things? How quickly you're going to fix it? What are your policies? Think through all that kind of stuff. Now, Cece sent you guys a message, but I forgot to say it at the very beginning. If you have any questions, we keep you muted because if you've ever been on one of these webinars, sometimes there's people talking and dogs barking in the background. So you're all muted, but you have the ability to ask questions using the toolbar. Cece keeps an eye on those questions, and if she thinks there's anything that's so urgent it can't wait till the end, she'll break in and tell me. And then we've got a period at the end where she's going to bring some of those questions out to me. So in the beginning, one of the things a lot of people are going to look at is their client or sales pipeline. What are the various ways that you're going to do to develop customers? Here in this example, we've got door hangers, direct mail, AdWords, labeled vehicles, and referrals, which add up to getting me 10 leads a month. I'm going to actually be able to get 8 quotes to those people because I'm sure you've all experienced this where people leave a message in your office saying they want to get an estimate, but you can never get them on the phone again. So 10 leads becomes, oops, that moved. 10 leads becomes 8 quotes. 8 quotes become 4 sales, and 4 of those customers maybe book reoccurring service. And we look at each of these steps differently because it's possible to have certain lead sources which will generate you more one-time cleans and less reoccurring customers. So each of these steps matters, and you want to look and track each of these steps. So we're going to get to measuring a little bit here in the future and show you a little more on that. Now, the second step of the processes that we recommend you start conquering is your employee processes. So, you've got your system in place. Your customers have a customer service agreement. They know what the difference between your spring clean and your maintenance clean is. You've got your cleaning procedure kind of figured out and all that kind of stuff. But now you have to start thinking about managing your employees. What are your rules and policies? How many times are they allowed to call off? What's your orientation and training plan and corrective action plan? What attendance, time off, tardies, call-outs, no-shows? Once again, I am not going to have time to be able to talk about all of these processes, but all of these things we list are things that you are going to want to have a written policy and procedure on. And there is not one proper procedure in the world. For example, we'll conquer attendance right now. My attendance policy in my company is you are allowed to miss 6 days in 6 months. I don't require a doctor's note. I don't care about any of the details. As long as you don't miss more than 6 days in 6 months, I don't care. If you miss more than 6 days in 6 months and you didn't ask for some type of formal leave, then you're fired. Done, period. That's my policy. Now, other companies have different policies. My brother, who runs my maid service Dallas, has a very different attendance policy that I don't recommend, and most of you probably couldn't pull off. His attendance policy is you will show up to work. If you are sick, I'll send you home. Now, you also have to realize that my brother's a Marine. He was in the Marine Corps for quite a few years, so he's got that kind of military discipline in mind that you will show up no matter what. Prove to me you're committed, and if you're sick, I'll send you home. Now, don't recommend that attendance policy for most people, but it works for my brother and works for his company. So there's not one rule, one policy that works for everyone. That's one of the great things about owning your own company is the company should reflect your personality and your values. So these systems and processes need to be built around your strengths and your weaknesses. Play up your strengths and shore up your weaknesses with a better system and process. The other great thing about having these processes written down is you can play good cop, bad cop with yourself. You can say things like, well, I'd really like to make an exception to that, but our manual is really clear, and I can't go against the manual, because then the manual is meaningless, and it won't, legally I have to be very consistent in how I enforce things, so I can't do it. Another way that we approach this in our company, if someone comes up and asks for something, is our rule is, if you would you make the exception permanent? So if somebody comes up and has some situation of, hey, Derek, I know we can't do this, but blah, 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 here's my whole story. And if at the end we say, you know what, you're right, that should be an exception to the rule, we will physically change the manual and make that an exception to the rule. If they tell us their story and we are not willing to make that a formal exception to the rule that we're going to change forever, then the answer is no. I can't do it. I can't make it a special exception for you. And it lets us play that good cop, bad cop with making our own policies and procedure manual the bad cop. Okay. Now, we talked a little bit about the pipeline for clients, but we don't talk very much about the pipeline for technicians, which I find fascinating, because when I go to things like our cleaning conventions, almost, I shouldn't say no one talks about marketing. Marketing is a topic, but everyone is always saying, I can't get enough techs, I can't get enough techs, I can't get enough techs. But most people will have a very formal marketing program for clients, but very few people have a formal marketing program for employees. They expect to put a sign in their yard or post a one-time ad on Angie's List or Craigslist, and from that one-time ad on Craigslist, they expect everything to be fixed. But when you come down to getting customers, you don't expect to run one advertisement and get all the customers you need. So why do we have this expectation that we'll be able to run one help wanted ad and we'll be able to get all the employees we ever need? It just doesn't work that way. We need to have a plan for recruiting, and you can see in this example we've got Craigslist, employee referrals, Department of Labor, and walk-in. How much can I expect from each of that? How many of those people are going to, out of that, how many of those are we going to get? How many of those are going to pass the telephone interview, the in-person interview, the background check, the Orion screening, their working interview, their 30-day mark, and their long-term mark? Now, you don't necessarily have to have all these steps, but what are these steps for you? And this is important because this lets us look at it and say, if I want to have 2 cleaning technicians by the end of this process, I need to have 40 leads at the beginning of this process. And once you start to understand that stuff, you can develop your system and your marketing plan to make it relatively consistent. I won't say that I am never short-staffed because I'm not that good, but it's very uncommon that we're massively short-staffed, because we know that we need to, in my company, have one person in training every single month. Because with my turnover rate, I need one person in training every single month so that I will have 5 new technicians every single year. Because that's my goal. So at the end of the year, I want to have 5 more techs at the end of the year than the beginning of the year, which means I need 12 people in training, which means I need about 20 people in my recruiting pipeline for each of those 12. So I've got to recruit 20 to get 1. So I have to do 240 leads to get my 12 techs to let me grow. So hopefully that all just made sense. I threw a whole bunch of numbers at you. This is going to make a little bit more sense. Darn it. Sorry. The way my mouse works is when I hit it certain ways, it scrolls. This will all make a little more sense as we start to hit the numbers. Okay? All right, so measuring your operations. I've talked a lot about measurement. Here's one that's secrets, and that is, as long as I've been doing this, as long as Tom has been doing this, as long as Liz has been doing this, and as smart and good as we think we are constantly measuring things and changing things. And the reason why is the world is not static. The advertising that I did 10 years ago, well, not 10 years ago, 8 years ago, is no longer effective. The ways I used to advertise don't work. My sales literature that used to convert doesn't convert like it used to. In-person quotes that used to work for me don't work. I now have to do more online and internet. So we are always tracking some key metrics, and you're seeing some of them here: total revenue, inquiries and leads, estimates, sales close, sales lost, clients lost, quality scores, client references, client referrals closed. And then on the employee side, total payroll, applications and leads, and you can see, I'm not going to get into it all in great detail. And we do this for a whole bunch of reasons, but part of it is because we're always learning. And I am actually going to pull up some real data and show you what this looks like for me. Now, in my office, I don't do anything fancy. We physically write this information down on a piece of paper and throw it onto an Excel spreadsheet. But what you see in front of you is a spreadsheet of every single quote that we did. Now, I've gotten a little geeky in that I've put these auto filters in here, but I'm going to show you a couple of things. I'm going to come in here and say I want to look at my home advisor leads because I do some home advisor stuff. And you can see that I paid for, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 16 home advisor leads. Out of those 16 home advisor leads, I booked 2 biweekly customers generating about $5,300 in revenue. Now what's interesting to me on this one, you see this little column over here of quoted? A lot of these people I never even got to talk to. So you'll see that I quoted, I guess these should say yes because by default I got the business. So I quoted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, and I sold and physically did business with 3 of them. So I get about 50% of my home advisor leads when I talk to them, but you'll notice that it looks like, I'm going to have to get a new mouse pad. You'll notice about 2/3 of my home advisor leads I never physically get to talk to. Well, that's a little depressing. Pay for all those leads and 2/3 of them I never get to talk to. Well, let's come over here and say, let's talk about Local Marketer. That's one of the competitors to Home Advisor, another place where I pay for leads. Well, you'll see that I got all these Local Marketer leads, which look great, but look at this. I never physically talked to any of these people. All of their leads are basically trash. So by tracking this, I've pretty quickly caught on that, you know what? We need to stop paying for Local Marketer. We didn't even get to talk to any of these people. So much less did we actually win any. We were never even able to get them on the phone. Now compare that to, say, for example, Angie's List. When I look at my Angie's List results, you will see that anything that's got a value in here means that I sold them, that I physically did business with them. So you'll see the vast majority of these people I actually sold. And even the ones I didn't sell, I quoted. Every single lead that I got from Angie's List, I either sold or I at least got to quote. And I'm not counting these right now because I don't have time, but I'm guessing there's 20-something leads, and I only lost 3 of them. So this tells me that Angie's List, for me, is a pretty good lead source because almost every single lead that I get in, I get to quote and not quote. And once again, I'm just digging into this data because I'm trying to give you an idea of why we want you to track this data. This was another one that's fascinating to me, previous clients. Look how many previous clients came back. I had 1 previous client that came back for 1 time, but in a 2-month period of time, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 previous clients come back, including a weekly. Every single one of them booked. None of my previous clients called and got a quote and didn't book. Every single one of them booked, okay? So I want you to think about that. How many of you have a program where you actively reach out to your previous clients and try to get them to come back on service? Because I can tell you, return on investment-wise, in a 2-month period of time, I generated more money off of these recurring clients than just about anything else, and it didn't cost me a dime. And then it's just interesting on other things. For example, how many people drove by and said they saw my sign? So I had 2 people who drove by and saw my sign. Now, for those of you that have ever seen my office, I do not have a good road front position, so it's interesting that even where I'm at, I get that many. How many clients did I get off a referral? Interesting to me, not all of my referrals actually booked regular service, so that's interesting. It seems like a lot of my referral business some of my referral business didn't actually book. So anyway, you can see how I can look at this spreadsheet and start figuring out those ratios. So when I was over here and looking at this sheet here that was telling you what percentage of your leads are converting. So when I'm looking at this, the one over here that said Local Marketer for me that generated 10 leads, well, guess what? The ratio went from 10 to actually, excuse me, I'm looking at recruiting, but the one that said Local Marketer, 10 leads, how many did I actually do an estimate for? Went to 0. So they're going to be dropped out of my system. So you get why we want to track this stuff, because we want to automate it and we want to consistently make it better over time. Okay, now we talked about a whole bunch of different key metrics, but the #1 metrics that we find that most residential cleaning services don't track and really need to track on a regular basis is the % of payroll to sales. And what that means is exactly how much of your direct payroll cost for the people who actually do the cleaning and what percentage of that is your total company. So that has to include their workers' comp, their benefits, everything that related to that. Now, not their supplies, just their actual cost of the people cleaning. And if you don't know that off the top of your head, typically if you take the cost of all of your employees, you pay your people $10 an hour, 40 hours a week, and you add 15% to it, that normally gives you roughly your fully loaded cost. But if your QuickBooks is set up the right way and your accounting set up the right way, you should be able to get a report that says this is my fully loaded cost for each person. At that point, we find that in almost every single cleaning company we talk to, you want to see that ratio number at 55% or less. And what Cece's saying is fully loaded means wages, their income taxes, workers' compensation insurance, basically all of that type of stuff. And it should move in lockstep. If you pay an extra $1 of revenue, you pay an extra 12 cents on those things or whatever it is. But once again, the key number there is your payroll as a percent of sales. Your direct payroll for cleaning only, I'm not talking about your office staff, if it's over 55%, it's very, very difficult to make money in this business. The really profitable companies keep it at 50% and less. So I'm not saying aim for 50% or 55%. I'm saying if you're over 55%, chances are you're not making money. Now, I've seen exceptions. I've seen some people that run really lean on their office staff, but at the end of the day, as you scale and you're going to need to hire some people in your office and your people to manage things, if your labor percentage runs over 55%, you're not going to be able to afford the support you need. The people who typically have a ratio less than 55% have a ratio above 55% and they're still making money. Those are the people where the owner of the company is doing everything. They're superheroing it. So they may be paying their people more than they should, and they're making up for it by not having any office staff, and they're working 70 hours a week, and they're practically near a nervous breakdown. If you want to have a sane life and you want to be able to afford the support you need, remember to try to keep that percentage 55% or less. Once again, or less key. Sometimes people misquote me on this, and they'll tell me, Derek, I'm at 55% like you told me I should be. Like, no, let's be clear. 55% is as high as you should ever be. I really want to see you at 48%, 47%, because then you're making really good money. Hopefully everyone's following that. Okay. So the last step in your systems and processes is to start thinking about an operations manager in your office. And this is the person and your processes you're going to need to start writing down for your rate adjustments, your annual rate increases, your loyalty programs, your company cars, how to hand over all of those processes that you as maybe an office manager is doing. So normally the way this works, once again, to kind of run through it, is you start and you get some processes in place for managing your clients. What are your rules and policies for them? And then you start coming up with rules and policies for your employees. How often are they allowed to miss? What's your attendance? What's your incentive programs? What's your pay? How are you going to manage that? Then you have to start writing rules and processes for office things. One of the ones which, once again, we cover in our foundations program that a lot of people don't cover is what is your rules for scheduling? When you're looking at the schedule and somebody is sick, what is the thought process and the series of questions that you should ask that allows somebody other than you to manage the schedule and for you to come in and not be upset about it? And you can write this. You can create a hierarchy that says number one concern. In my office, it's frequency of the customer. Not everyone's the same, but I've got a sales-driven culture. So my number rule is frequency of the customer. If you're a weekly customer, everyone in my company has to be dead for your appointment to be moved because weekly customers always get done first. Bi-weekly second, monthly third, one-time cleans last. So once again, in my office, if you're a one-time cleaning and I've got a problem, you're the one who's probably not getting cleaned. Now, I don't bump cleans. God, I can't think of the last time I bumped cleans. But if something happened and I had 15 people sick in my office and I had to bump a clean, we've got a very clear hierarchy of who we're going to call first and say, hey, Mrs. Smith, it's Derek at my maid service. Hey, I've got too many people sick today. Is it okay if we clean you tomorrow? And we always make it a question. So if they say, no, you have to come today, go, okay, no problem. I was just asking. I'm sure I can find somebody else. And then we call the next one-time clean, and we repeat those calls until we find whoever we bump. What we don't do is call the weeklies first. And that's my opinion in my company. Now, I know some other cleaning companies that write those rules in the exact opposite. If they've got somebody who's sick, they will call their weekly client first under the assumption that, hey, Mrs. Smith gets cleaned weekly. She probably won't mind if we skip this week. I'm not saying that's a bad rule, But there's a logic to both of those, and just like we get upset when our customers assume they know what cleaning means, cleaning means different things to different people. What does customer service mean to different people? For me, you never bump a weekly customer. If you bump a weekly customer in my office, you're fired. For other companies, they may look at it completely different and say, hey, my weekly customers have a good relationship with me. They don't mind if we miss occasionally, etc. So don't make your office staff guess. You want to write those rules out and make them really clear, because you know what? If we had a debate right here, right now on this phone conversation of the rules you would make on who do you bump first time cleaning or your weekly customers, I bet you this group would break out about 40-60. It's not going to be unanimous. Yet when we hire an office manager, we just expect that somehow through reverse osmosis and hanging around us, they know what those rules are. So one of the things we do in Foundations is we actually have an Excel spreadsheet we go through, and we write all these rules down about, all right, what's the first thing you consider? What's the second thing you consider? What's the third thing you consider? One of the students who went through Foundations a while back, their number one concern was geography. Their first question was, if someone is sick on this team that covers this area, I'm going to move their customers first because just geographically, I can't do it, which is perfectly legitimate. It's not something I have to worry about in Cincinnati because I'm not sending people 30 miles away or something. But this person works in a somewhat rural area where their cleaners were going 20 and 30 minutes out of the way. So the idea was if the person who covers far east side of the county is sick, I can't send someone from the far west side of the county to cover their houses. I just can't. I don't have anyone physically able to do it. So that's her number one concern in her hierarchy. And that's all, once again, perfectly legitimate. One of the things that's really important to understand is I cannot sit here and give you all of the magic answers and tell you how to run your companies because you're all going to be a little bit different. You're all going to have different rules and different ways that you set things up. Okay, so things that stifle your growth over time. One of the biggest ones is making things up as you go. Now, to be clear, I do think you do have to sometimes go with the flow. One of the sayings we have in Cleaning Business Builders is a CEO is prone towards action. If you spend all of your time trying to figure it out before you do it, you're never going to do anything. One of my favorite sayings is sometimes you just got to throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. You just got to try it sometimes and see if it works. So I want to be clear that when I say making it up as you go doesn't mean you always have to have all of the answers ahead of time. Sometimes you just have to sell something and see what happens. What we do mean is don't recreate the game every time. If you do something and it works and you like it, make it a policy and write it down. So the next time it happens, you can do the same thing. And that's what we mean by the second bullet point. Never writing it down the first time it happened. And what I mean by that is a variety of things. We just had this discussion in my office on the negative side. We just had Labor Day, and the Thursday before Labor Day, we had substantially more quality complaints than we normally have. And so we pulled our office staff together and had the discussion. We're like, guys, why does this happen to us every time? We need to write this down. The day before a holiday, we need to do more quality checks because our cleaners are already mentally on holiday, and they're not, I mean, let's be honest, most of us didn't do our best work in the office the day before a major holiday, and our cleaners are the same. But our clients, that's often their most important clean of the year because they've got company coming. And we were just having this discussion in my office of, why do we learn this lesson every couple months? Why don't we make this a policy and a rule that the day before any major holiday, we're going to triple our inspection and inspect almost every single house because our employees, even the ones who show up for work, are 50% on vacation already in their brain. So let's just make it a policy that day before holiday, we need to do more inspections. And once again, as many years as we've been in business, we just had this discussion of why do we learn this over and over again? Let's stop learning this and just fix it. Once again, not writing down your criteria for making an exception. If you make an exception for the rule, why? If you're willing to make an exception to the rule, then that exception needs to now become part of your manual. So if somebody comes to you and has a good reason to make an exception, you either need to say no, or you need to be able to pull out a manual and write into it. From now on, under this exception, we will do X, Y, and Z. Because then, you know what? It's not an exception anymore. It's just part of your operating procedure. And then finally, and this one is so very important to me, continually reviewing, revising, and improving your processes based on experience. If you're tracking those key performance indicators, you're going to discover things that aren't working as well as they used to. Your close rates aren't what they used to be. Your techs aren't sticking around. Maybe you're finding out that your training program isn't necessarily as good as it used to be. In fact, I'll give you a specific example in my company. We used to not vacuum furniture in the homes. For the first 5 years I was doing this, we didn't vacuum furniture. That was only part of our spring cleaning. But we were having a problem that our quality complaints were going up. And when we started pulling the details of the quality complaints, a consistent complaint was, they didn't vacuum my furniture. They didn't vacuum my furniture. They didn't vacuum my furniture. So we had a big discussion in the office where we all got together and said, hey guys, we're having a problem. You know, our #1 complaint on qualities is that we aren't vacuuming the furniture. What are some ways we can fix this? Well, we can do a better job of explaining to the customers up front that we don't vacuum furniture. How can we do that? We can, you know, do leave behinds. And someone in one of our people in our office said, well, what if people are expecting that we vacuum the furniture? Instead of spending all this time telling them we don't vacuum the furniture, why don't we just add that into our cleaning package from now on? And we all kind of went, oh, that's a really good idea. I know it sounds obvious, but it's kind of interesting how those meetings go. And we added vacuuming to the furniture to our maintenance cleaning package. So we've now changed the process in our company so that any home, we vacuum all the furniture in the house. Added about 5 minutes a house, so we did need to adjust our pricing a little bit, but our quality complaints went way down. So for us, that shows an example of us tracking it, and we were getting too many complaints. Why were we getting too many complaints? The data said people were complaining that we weren't vacuuming the furniture, you know, and once again, our initial reaction probably wasn't that different than yours. Well, God darn it, we told them we don't vacuum the furniture. Why are all these people complaining we don't vacuum the furniture? Our checklist says we don't vacuum the furniture. Didn't they read their checklist? Why did they sign up for our service if they expected us to vacuum the furniture? And they were like, you know what, nobody reads anything. Do you read those little terms and things when you sign up for something online? Why are we expecting our customers to read all our terms and conditions? They're telling us pretty clearly they're expecting the furniture to be vacuumed. So you know what? Let's just vacuum the furniture, drive the complaints down, change our training process to add that in, change our checklists, and change our pricing process, because it would have been really bad if we agreed to just vacuum furniture but didn't go back and change our pricing algorithm. We would have taken about a $3 hit on every job, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but I clean about 52 houses a day, so a $3 hit on every job would be $150 a week, about $8 grand a year out of my pocket, which, you know, I love my customers and all, but I would rather keep the $8 grand. So we had to go back and adjust all those things. So you are never done with this. That's the bad news for you, is this is a continual ongoing process. Now the good news is you don't physically need to do this. As your company gets bigger and as you bring more people on board, you can start having meetings like I do where you bring your key people together once a week and look at these key numbers. How many complaints did we get? Is that up or down? If it's up, why is it up? If it's down, why is it down? And what can we do to keep doing that? So that's the other thing that's really important. A lot of times people will come together and look at their numbers, and if it's up, if their numbers go the wrong way, they're, oh my God, the numbers are bad, we have to fix it. But if the numbers are doing well, everyone kind of celebrates and walks away. One of the questions is, why did that get better, and how can I do more of that? And once again, that, for example, when I was showing you those lead conversion numbers, hey, we had a great month. A whole bunch of our old customers came back. Yay, great, old customers came back. Everyone celebrate. Our question was, wow, that's great. Look at all those old customers that come back. How can we market to get more of our old customers back? Because look at all those guys that came back, and we didn't even try. What if we actually tried? How do we get more of that? So also, once you have something that works, try to think about how you go after more of it. All right, Cece, any quick or burning questions for me to cover? No? Apparently I'm good.
Oh, sorry, we do. Great question. I think, how complete is your operations manual, Derek, and how many pages is it? How big?
Mine is not massive. Now, once again, depends on what you think about your op. All right, let me back up. I have an employee manual, which is all of my rules and conditions to work for my company. It's about 45 pages long. Now, part of the reason it's that long is there is a lot of stuff I have to put in there for legal reasons, such as the fact you cannot nap on the job, which gets into a whole other story of unemployment and covering your butt for workers' comp. So my employee manual is about 45 pages long. My cleaning procedure manual is about 50 pages long, all of the cleaning procedure type stuff. My manual for my office staff in total, it's actually not pulled together into one manual. The way we do it is we've got a bunch of searchable documents on our computer, but last time I checked it was about 120 pages. And so what we do is we search things like breakage, and a little Word document pops up with our process of how we handle breakage. And the reason why, once again, is just very clear guidelines on things. If there is a breakage incident, you are to call the customer immediately. If we can order the item on Amazon and have it to their house within 2 days, do so. You know, we've just got all these checklists of what we do and how we handle it. We've also got a fair amount of rules that are also common sense, what I consider sort of my common sense rules. But if you don't have them, people are nervous to do it. We have one that says if it's less than $100 and it will make an unhappy customer happy, just do it. Don't ask anyone. So if we need to give somebody a discount because they were unhappy with their clean, or if we need to stay for an extra 30 minutes to make an unhappy person happy, if it costs less than $100 and it will take somebody from the category of unhappy to happy, just do it. Because I've got 58 positive reviews on Google, and I don't want a bunch of negative ones to drag them down, because the internet and your reputation is where we get everything. So we have very firm rules, like, once again, a breakage procedure that said, here's when you call them, here's what our follow-up steps are. When we have a customer complaint, who talks to the technician? When do they talk to him? How do we follow up with the customer? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? How do we do a quality check? All those steps are outlined. So that's very detailed, because there's people in my office that I want to know they've got accountability, that we got a complaint, therefore you do this. There are other rules, like dealing with customers calling in, which aren't as firm, like that $100 rule. If you can make them happy for under $100, just do it. Don't ask me. Don't say you have to talk to the boss. You have spending authority of $100. And I guess that's part of what I'm trying to describe, is part of that operations manual clearly tells them what their sandbox is. And what I mean by that is, what are the decisions you're allowed to make? What are you, every single person in my office knows how much of my money are you allowed to spend without asking me. They know what level of disciplining they're allowed to do with the customer. For example, most of my office staff cannot discipline the techs. They're not allowed to call them and say, hey, you know you've got to work till 5, what are you doing? They can fill out a form that says, I asked so-and-so to help, they didn't do it, and give it to one of the 2 people in my office that do discipline the techs, and we'll have that conversation. Because not everyone should have that responsibility, and to be honest, not all of my people have the demeanor to discipline people, but they have a way and a process to follow. So hopefully that made sense. Any other questions so far, Cece?
I don't have any other questions at this time, but I know we have another Q&A section, so I will be watching for that one.
Cool. We are going to have some more questions. Darn it. Okay, I swear I'm going to throw this mouse pad out the window. Okay, so one of the things we talked about a couple times is our Foundations of Success program, which is our consulting program. And don't worry, I'm not going to do a great big pitch, but people always ask me what it is, so I'm just going to cover it real quick. And for the typical maid service, if they had 3 new recurring clients, it would cover the total cost of the Foundations program. And the Foundations program looks really big, and it is. We do 6 months of testing and evaluation with you. We spend a week-long, God, not 8 hours a day, it's more like 13 hours a day, where we bring you out to Charleston, put you in a beach house, spend a bunch of time working on your business in detail, and then there's 6 months of ongoing support after the program is done. Once again, I'm not going to get into all the details, but if you bought all those things we do piecemeal, it would be about $42,000. Our Foundations program is $8,000 for a year-long consulting program. We do have payment plans for it. Once again, I'm not going to bore all you guys with the details, but this is what I wanted to show you because it's kind of fun. We've built a calculator on our website, which kind of helps you figure out what the cost of Foundations is, and it plays with some of those key numbers. So you can also use this for your own business and help you figure out some numbers for your own business. So there's some numbers preloaded in here. You've got 25 recurring customers now. You lose one customer a month. You charge your average customer $115. You clean your average customers twice a month. What's your gross margin? And then you see these little I's. If you move over the I, it tells you what it is. If I press this calculate button, it's going to do some math for me and tell me that I keep my average client for 25 months, that I generate monthly revenue of about $230 per client. My average revenue per client is $2,760. The lifetime value of a client is $5,750. And how much gross profit do you make off of a client, and how much yearly profit do you make off of a client? These are really kind of key numbers for you to know, so this is a fun calculator for you to play with, because if you know, for example, in this example, that the lifetime profit on a customer is $2,875, that's how much profit you make off of somebody over the lifetime they're going to be with you, then how much money are you willing to spend to get a lead? In my company, we typically spend, I shouldn't say a lead, a customer. We will spend $200 per client, and that's why we use services like Home Advisor. I don't recommend it for everyone. Please don't everyone go out and sign up for Home Advisor tomorrow. But you saw I've got that little Excel spreadsheet that said we book about 25% of our Home Advisor leads as ongoing clients, which sounds pretty lousy. Oh my God, Derek, you're only booking 1 out of 4 leads. Why are you paying for those leads? They suck. You're only booking 1 out of 4 of them. But those leads cost me $30 each. If I have to get 4 to book a client, I'm spending $120 a client. If I generate $2,300 of profit per client, I will spend $120 to get back $2,300 all day long and every day and twice on Sunday. So that's why we will use Home Advisor, knowing full well that we're only going to get 1 out of 4 leads. Now, Local Marketer, where I think my close ratio is more like 1 out of 20, the return on investment doesn't work. I spend $3,000 for every single client I get. I make $2,800 back. I'm never going to make money off of that. So this is a fun little calculator that we made available for you guys. Now, I know this is probably a big surprise for you, but we do actually have a program that we think is really cool and all of you would benefit from called Foundations of Business. But when you put those numbers in, we do point out to you that based on your numbers, if you sold 3 additional clients, you would pay for the cost of the entire Foundations program. Because while Foundations looks really expensive, if you're generating $2,800 per client, 3 clients would pay for the entire program. If you wanted to see how many clients you would need to actually pay for the program in just 1 year, if you got 5.79, or let's say 6 clients, because I've not found 0.79 clients yet, if you got 6 new clients, you would pay for Foundations in 1 year and then have extra profit in the 2nd year. So while the program looks really, really expensive, if we fix one thing in your business, whether that's helping you recruit employees better or making your Google your Google account work better so that you get more leads, it pays for the whole program. And like I said, CC preloaded some numbers in here, but you can come in here and play with things and say, I've got 50 customers, I lose 2 customers a month. I don't charge that much, Derek. I only charge $95. And I'm one of those guys at 45%, not 40%. And you can press recalculate, and it shows you what your numbers are. It goes in and does the math, and you can see that the value of a client is a little bit lower for me because I only do $95 a client. But it shows you that the gross lifetime profit is still pretty good because I don't lose that many customers a month. So it's a great tool. Really encourage you to go out there and play for it. You know, it does show you some things and help you do the math around figuring out what the lifetime value of a client is for you, because if you know how much you generate for them, then you know how much money you can actually spend to get them. And that's just another example of one of the key measures and things that you should measure going forward. So back to my presentation. Our Foundations program is really great. In fact, it's so good that some of our alumni come back and go through it a 2nd time. We typically have 2 to 3 alumni every time we do it that come back through. We do offer it to them at a pretty substantial discount, but they enjoy it and they like to come back and hit it again. We have a whole benefit program for our alumni. This upcoming convention in Vegas, we've just designed some really cool Craigslist ads, and we're going to be deploying that and teaching people how to use those Craigslist ads to recruit more people. Now, as a Foundations graduate, you can learn how to grow your business, how to deal with a lot of your problems, get all these cool bonus tools, and basically learn how the big companies are successful. I've been in this business 7 years now, and between our 3 offices, we'll do about $3 million in revenue this year, and we're opening 2 more offices next year. My goal is, after 10 years in business, to do $8 million in revenue, and I think that's doable, and I think it's doable because of all those systems and processes we put in place. So go play with those calculators, see what you got, and Cece, more questions now.
I don't have any more questions posted at this time.
Wow, I love it when I'm this good and nobody has any questions on anything. I do still have people on the call, right? Yeah, no, I got more people than they started with, so no, we're doing good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Derek, I will ask you to, if you'll flip back to the calculator. I did have a couple of questions about what's standard or what benchmarks people should be looking at. And the question is, I don't know if you refresh the page, if the preloaded numbers will come back. The question is the preloaded numbers that I designed in there, are those industry standards? What would you say for that?
Well, first of all, number of recurring clients depends on the size of your company. I wouldn't say everyone has 50 clients. Clients lost per month, we do find that anywhere from 2 to 4% a month of client loss rate is pretty reasonable. So losing 2 clients a month when you have 50 is relatively standard. We do find most people, actually, these aren't still your numbers, you see? Huh, those are my numbers. Let me open a new one. I think I don't know why it's not reloading. Welcome to the wonderful world of the internet where things don't always work like you want them to. Try this again. Because I think Cece's numbers were, 25 and 1. So once again, 25 and 1. We do find loss rates of as high as 4% a month is standard. So if you've got 25 clients, losing 1 is reasonable. Having 50 clients and losing 2 is reasonable. Your average client bill is going to be all over the board. Around $100 is reasonable, but this is going to vary. If you are in New York City or San Francisco, it's going to be a lot higher. Part of this also comes down to your business model, and I'll give you a very specific example. I use solo cleaners in my company, and my minimum bill is $85. I won't show up for less than $85 because I use solo cleaners. I clean a lot of apartments and a lot of condos because of that, because we charge a lot less than other people can get in and out. I do not service a lot of 4,000 and 5,000 square foot houses because using solo cleaners, we're going to be there all day long. But 115 is a pretty good guess for your average 2-person cleaning team. A 1-person cleaning team may be a little bit lower. A 4-person cleaning team may be higher. I don't know about in your market, but in my market, the local maids franchise won't show up for less than $160. Their minimum bill is $160. So I can guarantee you their number is $160. But they use a 4-person team. So once again, that 4-person team is probably going to be more attractive to people with bigger houses. Gross profit margin of 50% is pretty standard. In general, in almost every business in the world that I've ever seen, if you don't make at least if you don't make a 50% margin, you can't stay in business. And there are a few exceptions to it, but in almost every business you're in, they tell you if you can't take your cost and double it, you shouldn't be doing it. If you can't double it, don't. I mean, if you watch Shark Tank or any of those shows and somebody will come in and have a 30% margin, like, oh my God, get out of here, 30% margin, you can't make any money at 30%. Well, it's true. In most businesses, you can't. So yeah, that's pretty standard. I'd want to see some of those numbers a little bit different. If you wanted to be really successful, I would maybe want to see that average bill up a little bit higher and that gross margin a little bit higher, but it's still pretty close.
Awesome, thanks. That takes care of actually a couple of questions that came in at one time. So I don't have any additional questions through our question module here. I know that we've got about 10 minutes left. Was there anything else on the presentation? Sure. I can't remember, to be honest.
There was nothing else formally on the presentation, but I do love this topic. and we want to get into it. Like I said, it's a little bit tricky today because I can't physically tell you every system and process in your business. All I can do is help you think about some systems and processes and how you would want to go about it. Based sort of on a quick scan of who's on the call, those customer systems and processes are probably a good place for every single person to start because you're going to need it. Do you require a service agreement? I can tell you that's not even a universal thing. I do not require a service agreement. None of my customers sign a piece of paper with certain terms and conditions. Other people do require it. My own brother, who runs my maid service Dallas, requires people to sign a terms and conditions sheet. In fact, he calls it his play fair agreement. He doesn't even call it terms and conditions. It's basically play fair, and it says, here's the rules. Here's what we do. Here's what you do. If we screw up, this is how much we're going to pay you. If you screw up, here's how much you're going to pay us. Here's our lockout. Here's our cancellations, and all those types of things. What is in your scope of work? That's one of your client things. You have to very clearly know what you do and what you do not do and keep it consistent. When you're cleaning solo, it's very easy to customize what you do for every single client. As you grow, you have to move more and more towards a scope of work. We do this and we don't do that. And that's okay. You're going to be excluding some customers. And when you first start, that's really scary because you need every customer you can get. But as you begin to developing your scope of work and deciding what you do and what you don't do, that helps you figure out who your customer base is, which helps you target your marketing. So your scope of work can actually be your best friend because it makes it very clear to your customer what they're going to get and what they're not going to get, and it also makes it good for you because you can figure things out. One of the biggest problems I see happens in our business sometimes, especially with newer people, is they overpromise and they underdeliver. I see advertisements that say things like, best cleaning company in the area, we clean the things other people skip, stuff like that. You're setting the bar for your company extraordinarily high, where it's going to be very difficult. If you say you clean the things that other people miss, when you come in and miss anything, you've disappointed them because you've told them you never miss anything. And that's a really, really high bar to hit. Your scope of work helps you know what to advertise and what not to advertise, so customers know exactly what they're getting done. And there's a cleaning service owner who, when I first started, she was helping me out, and I thought she was crazy because she spent 10 minutes telling customers what she didn't do. So she would sell somebody, and they'd say, great, I want to use your service. You go, fantastic, looking forward to it. Hey, real quick, before we get started, we don't clean the backside of mirrors. We do not go under beds. We do not touch feces. We do not do this. We do not do that. And I was like, oh, my God, you're crazy. But, you know, in some ways she was genius because, yes, some percentage of customers said, oh, no, those are all really important to me. I can't use your service. But the vast majority of people said, yeah, okay, that's fine. And then she didn't have people calling and saying, you didn't vacuum under my bed, because she very clearly explained up front. So managing that expectation of what they're going to get versus what you're going to deliver is really important, and that's your scope of work. Because once again, what's included in a clean and what's not included in a clean is not as obvious as it sounds. And I used the whole example a minute ago of vacuuming the couch. Okay? How about going under the couches? You know, do you guys clean under couches? In our company, there's a rule about height. If it's more than 3 inches, we go under it. If it's less than 3 inches, we don't, because just logistically, we can't get the mop under there. But that's what our rule is. Scope of work is if there's an opening of 3 inches or more under your furniture, we clean under it. If the opening is less than 3 inches, we'll stick the corner of the mop under to get it as best we can, but we don't clean under there. And we are that specific with people so that there's no misunderstandings of, well, wait, you didn't clean under my couch. And you're like, well, no, I would have had to pull your couch out. And we work alone, and, you know, Asia weighs about 75 pounds, so what's she going to do, pick it up and throw it on her shoulder? That ain't going to work. So those are the type of discussions we have to have in our scope of work. So that's what we mean on the client stuff. What's included, what's not included. Do you allow your people, your clients, not to pay you right away? A lot of people will say payments expected day of service, but then they invoice all their clients. No, you know, if you say payments expected day of service, they need to pay day of service, and how are you going to address that? If they don't leave a check, whose responsibility is it to call them and remind them that it's due? How many times will you clean a house before you decide you're not going to clean for them anymore? My company policy is 4 times. If it's your 4th cleaning and there's not a check when we show up, then we won't do another cleaning for that. A lot of people are listening to that and going, oh my God, that's too much money. I know other companies that the rule is second cleaning. You miss a payment, fine, but when I show up on the next cleaning, the check for both cleanings better be there. I'll go 4 cleanings. So what's your rule on that? How far will you go on it? And I'll go 4 cleanings because I'm absent-minded. I'm my own worst customer. My poor lawn care guy just the other day, I'm like, oh my God, it's been 4 months since I paid him. I'm not trying to rip him off. I'm just a scatterhip brain. And I know some of my customers are too, so I've made my policies loose because I'm kind of loose. Okay, one more shot for questions. Anyone have anything else? If not, we will wrap up a couple minutes early today.
Yep,
Tracy, you got anything?
I think it's an early wrap up. We've not had any additional questions, but I'll reiterate what I posted in chat. We, of course, have recorded the webinar and we'll be posting it to our YouTube channel. And we'll send you an email in just a little bit when we've got that process completed. That email will also include a direct link to the calculator that Derek demonstrated. It's really cool to play with, give you some interesting numbers to investigate in terms of figuring out the health of your business. That email is also going to include a nice little freebie for you guys, a direct download of the many sections your operations manual can have. It's a list of more than 2,000 pages. If you put all of Tom's operations together, if you put all of Liz's operations together, if you put all of Derek's operations together, and I'm not talking about in triplicate, it's 2,000 pages, just one of theirs. If you put it all together in one book, it's 2,000 pages. And you're going to get it, you're not going to get the 2,000 pages, you're going to get a list of what that all includes. So it should give you hopefully some more ideas about how big and how much you should be thinking about as your business grows and as you come into needing additional policies and procedures to manage a growing business. So we hope that will be useful to you and you will enjoy that. And I'll certainly get in contact with any of us as you continue to have questions. And a few people asked for some calls from the coaches, and I'll be passing that information along, helping you get those contacts in the next few days. So we're always excited to make new connections this way. That concludes our webinar today. Watch your email for some more information and that nice little download freebie. Thanks so much for joining us. Derek, thank you as well. And to Jobber, our sponsor today.